Welcome to Beyond the Box. Today we're speaking with Ian Sutcliffe, General Manager and Director of AA Smartfuel. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Tony.
AA Smartfuel has more than 1.1 million householders as members. Can you share some insights on what drives consumer engagement?
I think there's a number of avenues that really drive it. I don't think it's any one thing in particular. I think the opportunity of listening to your customers, understanding your customers is really important. Just don't serve up tripe. At the end of the day, it's got to be relevant. Whatever you're doing has got to be relevant for the consumer. And I think that's probably the number one piece that I'd be advocating. In our, I guess, from AA Smartfuel's perspective, visibility of the program is really important as well. To get them engaged in what we do, they've got to be seeing the program around at our participating retailers. So getting retailers engaged is another kind of really important facet of customer engagement from our perspective. And that's not always easy. Retailer engagement, they run their own businesses, so trying to get them engaged takes a lot of hard work for them to operationalise it. But once they do, then the customer usually goes away pretty happy. And I guess in today's environment, this always-on mentality, instant gratification is where it's at. So it probably comes back to that relevance piece. If there's something in it for me and it's meaningful, I'm probably going to get engaged with what you're doing.
With co-branded schemes, such as AA Smartfuel working with BP and Caltex, they come with benefits and risks. If you're giving advice to marketers, what would you say about those risks should be and how they handle those?
I think there's probably a number of things just to be wary of, and I think in the main a lot of it's common sense, but it's probably doing the groundwork up front. Almost thinking about what disaster might look like and making sure you contract for it is probably one of the biggest things to be mindful of. Certainly with our partners, we look for aligned goals. If there's a mismatch, partnerships are never going to work anyway. So making sure that as marketers, we don't see all the positives. We kind of see actually there might be some things that we've got to be wary of. So aligned goals is one thing. The other part of that is making sure that that expectations are aligned as well, and that they're articulated in the contracts, and that they're regularly managed. I think it's one thing having them in the bottom drawer in a contract. The other piece is actually living them day to day. So really making sure and holding your partners to account is, and it's not easy, but it's certainly something that needs to be looked at. The other thing that in any coalition scheme, especially when you've got biggish sized partners, is just managing the ownership part of it. So AA Smartfuel program, we own that proprietary product, but there's some big boys we play with, and naturally they'll jostle for a bit of position. So it's kind of clearly staking out what that might look like. And probably the other part of the contracting piece for us is making sure we're clear around who owns the data. That can often lead to squabbles. So it's kind of really articulating that. And I think, so if there's one thing I'd say is make sure you contract, in a fair bit of detail when you're going to enter into these things.
In 2014, you announced rewards for customers shopping globally in sites such as ASOS and Marks & Spencer. Now, this is innovative thinking. What advice do you have for marketers on how they innovate in such a way?
I think that the real challenge is we're in such a fast-moving marketplace. For marketers, you just got to keep your eyes and ears open. It's hard to get really new ideas. I think a lot of ideas that we see are kind of rejuvenated ideas that have been done before. But I'd certainly be encouraging, listen to your customers. They don't always know what they want, but they kind of, if you're listening, you'll be picking up snippets that could become valuable to put into the pot. But whatever you do, I think you just got to make sure you balance it with what the customers are looking for, or you believe they're looking for, and what your business is trying to do. One without the other kind of don't work. You might satisfy the customer, but your business needs aren't met. That's not going to be, a good outcome. So I think just trying to balance that. And the other thing I'd urge marketers to do is, try some stuff. If you kind of, there's a gut feel element that I often think's missing in marketing in today's age, and I think that's got to be brought into the mix as well. If you're on top of your game and you kind of got a sense of something, try it. What's the worst that can happen? Might not work. At least you won't die wondering. So it's pretty important.
What's the one thing you think marketers need to get right in the next 12 months?
I'd really like to see marketers focus on the measuring media against business outcomes. Rather than just industry norms. I think we put too much emphasis on the industry standards around how media performs rather than against business outcomes. So for me, that would be the one thing I'd love to see.
And what about some final words of wisdom? So there's a lot of change going on in the pace of digital in particular. So what things do marketers need to do?
I think if there's one thing, I'd just be urging marketers just to stay true to their cause in terms of have clarity around what you're trying to do and don't let anything get in the way of that, and you probably won't go too far wrong.
Thanks, Ian. We really appreciate your time.
Pleasure. Thank you.